Maduka being the name that reminds me of home. That's what people call me at home. So I try to carry the name along with me. Even when I decide to use the name that people are familiar with, I always add an M to, remind me about home. And the fact that at the end of the day, the human being is greater than whatever wealth or whatever riches exist in the world. So it's a name I like. In terms of background, it's also interesting because I actually studied mass communication, and from that background of mass communication, I moved into accounting. So I have a degree in mass communication and a professional certification in accounting. The interesting thing about a mass communication graduate in accounting is that some of those things that they say the accountants don't do well, they say accountants don't write well, accountants don't speak well, accountants don't do this well, do that. So my background in mass communication actually makes me to do those things well, such that starting my career in KPMG, one of the things that I had advantage over other people was the fact that, my memos were well crafted and all of those things. So that's which ought to be a disadvantage, not having a science or numbers background turned out to be an advantage. My experience has been at KPMG, Hez Holdings, and VFD Group. So at KPMG, I was involved in external audit, internal audit, board advisory services, sustainability services, and enterprise risk management. Those things have been the bedrock of my subsequent activities in the professional realm. At Hez Holdings, I was in internal audit and subsequently the Chief Financial Officer. Okay, and now in VFD Group, I'm in finance and risk management, so which brings together some of the experiences I have had over time in finance, in risk management, in compliance, and related activities. Talking about inflation, well, the inflation has affected the cost of doing business generally, especially operating costs and all that. But just like the Chinese say, there is always a seed of opportunity in every crisis. So if you look at the high inflation in Nigeria today as a crisis, then you also have to borrow a leaf from the Chinese to think of the seed of opportunity that lies within the crisis. So therein lies what we try to do in VFD Group, trying to take advantage of the seed of opportunities that exist in the crisis. Just like the Chinese again used to say that they use two brush strokes for the world crisis. One is the one of danger and the other one is the one of opportunity. So, of course, the escalating cost of doing business is the danger. But then there is also the word of opportunity. What can you do in the midst of all that? So is to look at smarter ways of doing business, is to identify the opportunities that the ordinary eye cannot see. And to do that, you need trained eyes that will be able to spot all those opportunities, make those investments that will outstrip the inflationary trend that exists within the country. If there are inflationary trends that have resulted in higher cost of doing business, the implication is that a number of businesses will suffer, and a number of businesses will go into some serious problem, liquidity problems, and all the other sorts of business problems. And when that happens, an investment company like ours actually positions itself to take advantage of that situation, because that is the best time to get very good companies that are underperforming because of the situation, that have not planned properly for that situation, and as such are caught up in the whole issues, to get good pricing for those investments, move in, restructure things, and turn them around, so that by the time the cycle, because the boom and bust cycle is always a cycle. There is a time for boom, there is a time for bust. So if in the time of bust you move in, you help to put things in place, of course you have faith in the company. It's just that the situation around it, due to the untrained eyes, didn't prepare properly for them. You step in using our governance and turnaround principles, will result in restructuring those entities and taking them to the next level, such that we move them from bust to boom. And therein lies some aspects of our business model. Capital market is critical in every economy, right? And it helps in a number of ways. One is in price discovery. You don't know how well you're doing or how well your company is doing until you actually discover the pricing for the things for the company. So the capital market helps in that regard. The capital market also helps, like we talked about, companies that run into crisis. The capital market presents an avenue for companies to recapitalize, and getting more funds into its operations. The capital market is also an avenue for you to socialize, so to say, with investors and getting some views and reposition the company. The capital market also helps even in terms of governance, because if you venture into the capital market, you're forced to comply with some governance principles, some risk management principles, without which you will not be able to survive in that company. You are expected to be compliant with all of those principles. So the being in the capital market helps you to comply with those risk management and governance principles that put the company in a better pedestal. By doing so, and when the company is in a better position, the investors are happy to take a stake in the business and bring in more funds and all of that into the business. So the capital market actually plays a very critical role in this. And VFD as a listed company, part of the reasons why VFD had to list is also to enable it, one, to give the investing public an opportunity to see the things we are doing in VFD Group and partake in the things, the turnaround and the profitability that we have over time, the increase in the value that we provided for shareholders. At the beginning, if you look back 5-6 years ago, those people that invested at 100 naira today, they've, apart from the dividend they have taken over time, the worth of their shares has grown astronomically. In percentage terms, we're talking of things in excess of 300% and all that. So that gives people an opportunity to, grow shareholders' value with us and reap the dividend that exists within it. The capital market also gives us an avenue to bring in funds, because the model we run is such that we constantly need to access some funds, make some investments, implement some of the things we do that we make those investments to move from the value they are today to a much more higher value in future. and then there is value for the shareholders and then we come back again in the cycle, assess more funds with which we make new investments, and then grow the value of those investments to a stage where we create additional value for our shareholders. All of these things are made easier, through the capital market. It's not as if you can't do it otherwise, but the capital market makes it even easier. The capital market also helps investors to see exactly how you are going about all of these things. Investors see the transparency you adopt in doing your business. The investors see your compliance level with corporate governance, risk management principles, and investors see through timely reports that you submit, how well the company is doing over time, and they make informed decision either to go with you or otherwise. We actually want to look at it from a risk management perspective, and in that regard, I would say that there are a number of things that exist for investors to actually assess whether to invest in a company or not. And like I always say, investment is a serious business, and people who get involved in it should take it seriously. So before people rush into making investments, they should actually look at certain indices that are required to assess those investments. Okay, so if you actually sit back and look at those indices and do your proper assessment, look at the numbers that have been thrown, the projections that have been made, critically have a team that look into all of those projections, assess them and see that they are actually, the assumptions surrounding them are realizable. If you do all of those risk management very well, you will hardly make mistakes. Of course, there are still room for error, which is why in every situation, you always give room for error. But if you do all of those things properly, you will hardly make mistakes. And that is the idea we suggest from VFD Group, because we have a team in the investment management team that is dedicated to looking at the market, doing proper analysis of the people that come to the market, looking at the projections and assumptions, which is the main reason why when people come to the market, there is what they call facts behind the figures, where you look beyond the normal numbers, research into some other things outside of what the untrained eye can see. And from those analyses, come to the conclusion that the assumptions surrounding the numbers are realistic or not. And when all of those things are done and we actually make the investment, it turns out to be good. So, like I said earlier, investment and investing is a serious business that should be taken seriously, and people should consider all the risks before they make those investments, instead of just looking at the coatings that are brought to the market by sweet-talking business people or promoters that obviously want to access some cash, but when those analyses are done properly, most of the times, you hardly get it wrong. Risk management is simply the process that enables you to identify risks, assess those risks, put in place controls to mitigate the impact and likelihood of those risks happening, monitor those controls to be sure that they are happening the way they are supposed to happen, and then report to the appropriate people so that they will take decisions to improve the situation. So whether it's an investment company like ours or anywhere else, those principles hold true, right? So the person that is responsible for risk management on a constant basis needs to do environmental scanning. Environmental scanning enables you to identify and have an ongoing understanding of emerging issues, the things that will keep the company, give the managers of the company sleepless nights. the things that could stop the company from achieving its objective. The risk manager identifies all these things using certain tools that have been put in place and continues to be put in place. So once all of those things are identified, the risk manager puts them on a scale to assess the likelihood that those things could happen in the company. So in the case of VFD Group, the risk manager identifies all of these things that could stop VFD from achieving its objectives, put them on a scale to know the likelihood that those things could happen and the impact that those things will have, both financial and otherwise, on the company if they actually happen. When you identify that and you feel that any of them are worth your time, that is, that the likelihood is high and that the impact will be significant, the risk manager then puts in place controls to ensure that the likelihood is reduced or that the impact will be minimal if it happens. Then those controls are then monitored, because at the end of the day, if you put in place those controls and they don't function as they ought to function, there is still a problem. So the risk manager monitors those controls to be sure that they are operating as designed and they're operating effectively, and then puts up some reports to relevant parties. So you can put a report to management, put a report to board committees, send a report to the board to enable these committees take decisions that will impact the way things happen in those organizations. So at the end of the day, the risk manager is responsible for helping the company achieve its objective. So, and identifying those things that will stop the achievement of those objectives, putting controls in place to minimize those things that will stop the achievement of the objectives, and by so doing, helping the company to achieve its objectives. So the work of a risk manager is critical and very important. The key thing is to have a good base. So once you have a good base, you can replicate, wherever you go. So the basic things that underline VFD as an investment company have been defined, and they have been codified and institutionalized. So those things are taken to anywhere we go. So if we go to Ghana, we take with us those principles, and when we get to Ghana, we domesticate them. So because there will be some differences between Ghanaian laws and Nigerian laws and situations and all that, so we had to domesticate them. But the thing is that we have put in place the basic things that we need that helps us to achieve our objectives. We have put in place, the governance principles, the risk management principles, the investment principles that underpin all the things we do. We have documented all those, codified them, and all we need to do is that, because one of the key things we believe in as an investment company is co-investment. So which means we work with some other entities sometimes to make our investment. So we identify relevant partners in these climbs, who we work with to ensure that we domesticate those our principles and make growth possible. Well, I would say that sustainability has always been there, even in the private sector. As far back as 2008, as a staff of KPMG, I actually led some sustainability engagements, and they were all in the private sector. Working with Rekit Benkaisa, Guinness, and all of those people had some sustainability issues that they were dealing with, and we helped them. The thing was that it wasn't local, so to say, because most of those entities are local subsidiaries of foreign entities. So their foreign entities drove those sustainability principles. But even Access Bank PLC in those days still had, devoted a lot of attention to sustainability. So sustainability has always been with the private sector. but they had not been fully embraced. In short, the central bank came up with some sustainability banking principles so many years ago, but those principles have not been fully embraced. But what I think has happened is that a lot of work has gone into trying to help people, embrace sustainability, help entities embrace sustainability. A number of consultants have also worked with regulators to ensure that sustainability issues are embedded into regulations and laws, so as to make it compelling, so to say, for entities to do. Because most of the times, especially in Nigeria, if there is no push to get those things done, nobody does it. So we now see situations where the National Code of Corporate Governance had a very generous chapter on sustainability, trying to, develop a section that tells entities that they must comply with, sustainability principles, and a number of other regulations from other regulators across the country also now put in sustainability principles. And the reason is not far-fetched, because sustainability is actually in the interest of the companies. It's actually in the interest of the entity. Everything you talk about there is about things that will make the company, survive in the long term. If you talk of the social factors, if you talk about the governance factors, the economic factors, all of those principles are actually things that at the end of the day is in the interest of the company. So having companies embrace them or putting it in regulations or regulatory issues is actually trying to force companies to save themselves. So it's something that, it was like risk management. When risk management initially came into this country, the many entities did not embrace it, but gradually people started to realize the importance of managing risk, and the fact that if you have to do it in a structured way. So a number of the things we talk about in sustainability are actually things that entities do one way or the other, but not in a structured way. So all of these policies, even the IFRS X1 and X2, which tries to put some standards around it, is only trying to let entities know how to deal with sustainability issues in an organized way. So, and set it up and all that, which aligns with what we believe in KPMG, in VFD Group, to organize all of those things, the things we do, put policies in place to drive it, and ensure that we do it in a way that it will be sustainable, just like sustainability demands. Well, I told you that my background is in mass communication. So if you're in mass communication, you have to write, especially for somebody like me that is not good in broadcasting. If you're not good in broadcasting, you have to be good in the written side of it. So yes, I used to write. I actually have some written works. But when I moved fully into accounting, there was so much to learn because I was going into numbers. Everything was alien. It was a lot of struggle. So to survive in that field, I had to keep everything about writing to one side and focus on accounting. But now that I have kind of settled in accounting, I think it's time to go back to my first love. Because I remember, during my interviews in KPMG, one of the questions they asked was, where do you want to be in 25 years' time? Right? And I told them that in 25 years' time, I would love to be a professor of mass communication, loved by my students, adored by the society, and and all of those things, and 25 years' time will actually be in 5 years' time from the time of that interview. So now that I've settled, I have to think about writing again so that in 5 years' time, I will start fulfilling those dreams I once had. In terms of favorite writer, yeah, in those days I used to love the works of William Shakespeare a lot, yeah, and the most prominent one of the drama, one of the play. You know, he essentially wrote a number of plays. One of the ones I enjoyed so much was As You Like It. The key driving factor is the fact that nothing under the sun is impossible. If you can dream it, you can actually achieve it. So I will encourage everyone, no matter your background, which is the thing I saw in KPMG, because they actually, even though it's an accounting firm, the requirement for entering was actually a degree in any course. So if you studied English, Igbo, Yoruba, you can actually get into KPMG. And then you are expected to, do the things that accountants do. So the underlying principle behind that is the fact that anybody, no matter what you studied, can actually thrive in an accounting firm. So that was the thing that propelled me to say that if this entity had this dream, had this, intention, why can't we help them make it possible? And that's what pushed me. So it could be tough, it could be difficult, but determined people actually do big things. So I will encourage anybody to know that impossibility is nothing. You can actually get to wherever you want to get to if you put in some hard work, some resilience, and essentially imbibe the principle of grit.